Hey y'all, it's Megan, and in this video, we are sewing up the Emmy pattern. It's a really cute cross back sports bra or long line with a removable cup option. First, you're going to need to cut all your pieces and then go ahead and add the interfacing to the wrong side of your back pieces on the back lining and main pieces. If you're adding a inner lining or the removable cup option, then you will go ahead and prep those pieces. And then you're going to start with your straps. You're going to fold them in half, right sides together, and you are going to stitch them together on the long edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you have it stitched, then you are going to turn them right side out using a safety pin or your favorite turning tool. Once you have it flipped right side out, then you're going to take your elastic piece and you are going to compare it to your strap piece, and you want them to be exactly the same length. It's really easy for the straps to stretch out while you're sewing them, even if you're using a serger. So if it's a little bit longer, just trim your strap piece to match the elastic piece. And you're going to repeat this step for all of your strap pieces. So you should have 2 inner upper straps and 2 outer lower straps. Once you have it flipped right side out and they are the correct length, exactly the same as your elastic, then you are going to insert the elastic with a safety pin. And once you get the elastic on one end, you are going to baste it in place and then continue to pull it through till it hits the other end, and then baste that end as well. And you're going to do this again for all your elastic and strap pieces. You can go ahead and set the strap pieces aside, and we're going to sew the front and back together at the side seam. So you're going to place them right sides together and pin them along the side, and then stitch them together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. You're going to do the same thing with your lining front and back pieces, stitching them together at each side with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once those are sewn, you can just set the lining aside, and you're going to lay your main bodice out flat with the right side up. Take your inner upper strap and you are going to put it right sides together onto the pickup a 1/4 inch from the center. And you're just going to pin it in place. Then take the outer or lower strap, again, right sides together, and you're going to put it right next to the other strap, which when they're butted together, it should be a 1/4 inch from the outside edge. And then you're going to baste the straps in place along the top edge, just a scant 1/4 inch from the top edge. Then once both of those straps are basted in place on each side, we're going to start pinning the strap to the back bodice. So take that upper inner strap and pin it right sides together to the opposite back bodice. So if we're working on the right upper straps, you're going to pin it to the left back bodice. Then taking the lower outer strap, which should be longer, and pinning it to the lower marking on the back bodice. You're doing the same thing with the other strap. So this is working with the left side front pickup, and then you're going to the right back bodice. Once you have the straps pinned in place, just make sure they're not twisted in any way. Then you are going to go ahead and baste them just a scant 1/4 inch from the back bodice edge on each side. Once you have these basted in place, if this is your first time making the Emmy, then I highly recommend going ahead and skipping to the band to baste your band pieces together and then baste the band on the main bodice and go ahead and trying it on to see if you want to adjust the strap length before moving on to sewing the lining. Once you sew the lining, you're going to have to unpick quite a lot to adjust the strap length. So this is the best time to go ahead and baste that band on and try it on. Now it's time to sew our lining to our main bodice. And because these straps cross, I do like to work from one side of the back bodice to the other. So you're going to pin your lining to the main with those straps sandwiched in between. You're pinning them with the right sides together and you're going to nest all of the seams, meaning that you're going to press the main seams toward the back bodice and the lining seams toward the front bodice so they just stack a little bit nicely and aren't too thick. So again, working from the back bodice, you're going to pin them together and then pin them together along the seams, the underarm, and the top pickup. Once you start getting towards the center, you're going to need to move and adjust the straps so you can keep working in a easy flat way. So you can see I'm kind of pulling the straps and then working with the center as I'm straightening out and moving the straps out of the way. Once you have this all pinned, this will take a few minutes. Then you're going to stitch the main and lining bodices together along the back bodice edge, the underarm, the top of the pickup, and the front neckline on each side. And you're sewing this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can add clear elastic to this seam either as you're stitching it or after for some added support. Just like when you were pinning the bodices together, as you're sewing these together, you're going to have to move and adjust the straps to have the seam you're sewing be flat as it's going through your machine. So just work slowly sewing the bodice pieces together. Once you have them sewn together, if you used a sewing machine, then you can go ahead and clip into your corners by using pinking shears or just clipping into but not through the seam allowance on the curves so you have a nice smooth curve. You can also clip the corners at the angled edges if you used a sewing machine. And then you're going to flip the bodice right side out so the lining is toward the wrong side. You do want to use a iron to press the bodice out, and you may need to use a pressing cloth and a lower temperature so you don't melt your athletic knit. So go ahead and make sure to test out your iron settings on a scrap before you iron your real Emmy bodice. Then you're going to align the lining and the main so that the edges are lining up on the bottom, and you are going to baste them together along the bottom edge about 1/8 of an inch from the raw edges. Then you can go ahead and set your bodice aside. If you are adding the optional enclosed elastic in the bottom band, then go ahead and overlap your elastic pieces by 1/2 of an inch and zigzag the ends together a few times to hold it in place, and then go ahead and set that aside. Now we need to prep the back band, and at the markings on the band piece, you are going to cut the marking 1/2 of an inch long, and in between the two markings, you are going to press that 1/2 of an inch toward the wrong side. I like to use a little bit of Wonder Under or knit hem tape to hold this in place, but if you don't have that on hand, just press that 1/2 inch to the wrong side with your iron to hold it in place. You're going to do this on the top and the bottom of your band. Then you're going to place your back band and your front band's right sides together, and you are going to stitch them at each side with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you're not adding the elastic to the band, then you are just going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, lining up the raw edges and the seam allowances, and you are going to baste the band together at the top, leaving that 1/2 inch that we pressed unsewn. If you did add the elastic, then you are going to tuck the elastic inside of the band, and your elastic may be a little bit wider than the band here. That's okay, it's not wrong. And you are going to fold the band around the elastic. And then you're going to baste the band together along the top. The elastic should be tucked inside, not together at the top, or else you will see it at the back opening. Now it's time to add the band to the bodice. So you are going to put them right sides together, and you're going to pin the back bodice edge to that pressed edge of your back band. And you're going to pin them on each side. Then you're going to pin them together at the side seams and the center front of the bodice and the band. And then you're going to stretch the band to fit the bodice, and you're going to sew your band to the bodice, and you will need to slightly stretch the band to fit the bottom edge. I like to use my sewing machine to sew at least a few inches on each side of the back opening. I actually went ahead and just sewed the entire band here with my sewing machine because I added the elastic and I wanted to make sure that my elastic was not in this seam allowance. So I'm kind of pressing the elastic out of the way as I'm stitching. And once I have it sewn with my sewing machine, whether you just did a few inches on each side or the entire band, then I like to go back and stitch it again with my serger to just finish that edge with a nice seam. Now you're going to take that serger tail, if you use a serger, and tuck it under that seam, and you're going to press the seam toward the bottom band, and you're going to top stitch around the entire bra to finish it and to hold that seam down and to also close that opening on the back band. If you added your elastic in the band, then you will be catching the elastic now in the top stitching. You do want to use a stretch stitch here or your cover stitch machine. And then your Emmy is complete. If you have any questions, as always, you can leave them down below and I will try to answer them. If you make an Emmy sports bra or a long line, then we would love to see them posted in our Facebook group or tag me on Instagram at Made for Mermaids, hashtag Emmy pattern, hashtag Made for Mermaids patterns.